Hello everyone, Calamity here. Upset that I lost another 50-50 to Chi-Chi. Today's video is going to be all about our favorite secret agent Yelan, who's going to be having her rerun banner in 4.0 right alongside one of the brand new characters in Fontaine, Lainey. So if you're deciding to pull for her, I've decided to release a updated guide for Yelan on how to build her, covering her talents, weapons, artifacts, constellations, team setups. I will not be doing a Spiral Abyss showcase at the very end like I normally do. Those kind of take up a lot of time, but I will show her what she looks like in combat in late game content. We have a lot to go over, so let's get started with her talents. So the first one is the normal attack talent, Stealthy Bowshot, and it is for the most part just a regular standard normal attack talent, except when you get to this breakthrough section here. Now, after spending 5 seconds out of combat, when Yelan is in what's called the breakthrough state, you'll actually be notified of this. If you look at the bracelet on Yelan's right wrist, it will actually glow when she's in the breakthrough state. So what does this mean? This means that when you do a charged attack, it's going to have an 80% decreased charge time, and you will shoot what's called a breakthrough barb. A breakthrough barb is basically an arrow that does more AoE, at least more than the standard charge shot hydro damage. So it's really useful for exploration and dealing with groups of enemies. Something also worth mentioning if we take a look at the skill attributes, so you can see the skill multipliers here are all pretty like normal standard stuff, but when we get to the breakthrough barb damage, we can see that this is the only one that actually scales off your max HPs, which means when it comes to stats for your Yelan, attack percentage actually doesn't do anything for her. Neither does flat attack, of course, because as we can see, that's only going to make your normal and your regular charge shots do more damage, but we don't use Yelan for that. But if you decide to use her breakthrough barbs, then those will get scaled with her HP, and we do build for that when it comes to her artifacts. Just something worth noting, the breakthrough barb though is not something that you use too often, or at least I don't. A lot of people just use Yelan for her quick elemental skill and her burst, but the breakthrough barb is something worth considering because it does do decent damage. Next up, we have the lingering lifeline. This is a very good skill for multiple reasons. So there are two versions of it. There's the tap and the hold, and you will actually be using both. Usually you kind of stick to one or the other, but in Yelan's case, you will be using a mixture of both. It depends really on what you're fighting. So what does this skill do? Whether you tap or hold E, Yelan is going to move really fast, and she'll be able to walk through enemies. When she does this, you'll hear like a knot getting tied noise, and it will actually pull the enemies in a little bit closer to each other when you end the skill and the lifeline explodes. It deals a bunch of damage, and it creates a bunch of particles for Yelan, just similar to like Jingcho when he uses a skill. It gives you a bunch of particles. It's great for her burst uptime. Now, if you just do the tap version, Yelan will just do a simple forward dash with her skill. If you do the hold version, while holding it, you can actually have continuous movement that you can control. Again, where Yelan moves really fast here. And not only that, every time you tangle an enemy with her skill, you have a chance of gaining the breakthrough state. So you can actually gain another breakthrough barb arrow. Just again, make sure you look at Yelan's bracelet. If it's glowing, you got it. If not, that's not the end of the world or anything like that. And if you look at the skill attributes once again, we can see that it does scale off her HP. And if you do the hold version, you get 3 seconds of really fast running. Now, another way that I use this skill very often is exploration. Yelan's skill is one of the fastest ways to get around in Teyva. It's one of the fastest skills. It's even faster than Sayu's rolling. And it doesn't consume stamina while you're moving this fast. Very useful for getting around. I use it in domains, when running to the key to activate the fight, or when running to a boss. Just very useful to use. And lastly, we have her bread and butter skill, the Depth Clarion Dice. This is the big one. So when you activate her burst, she's going to do AoE hydro damage to nearby opponents, and you will see a dice on her shoulder. When you have this dice, it's going to do what's called Exquisite Throw. When any character, including Yelan herself, does a normal attack, the dice will fire hydro arrows that deal damage based off Yelan's max HP. Remember, it's only normal attacks, so unfortunately this means that she doesn't really synergize with DPS characters like Ayaka or Ganyu because they primarily do charge attacks, or in Ayaka's case, she primarily does her burst. So it only works with normal attacks. And the second thing to note is that it will also activate when you use Yelan's skill and you detonate the lifeline and it explodes and deals damage. So if we take a look at the skill attributes once again, we can see that, again, based off the max HP, and the exquisite throw damage has ×3 because it shoots 3 arrows simultaneously, duration of 15, cooldown of 18, energy cost of 70. So you are going to need quite a bit of energy recharge with your Yelan. This talent right here is the biggest priority. So in terms of, like, you know, order of what should I upgrade first, burst, then her skill. Her normal attack is optional. Again, those breakthrough barbs can be a worthy investment if you so choose, but definitely not the priority here. Burst first, then skill, normal attack if you want. Let's move on to her Ascension talents, which is the first one is called Turn Control. Yelan's going to basically get more HP, depending on how many different elemental types that you have in your party. Now, don't feel like you have to maximize this talent and try to pair her up with 4 different elements and get like a weird team because of it. In fact, it's actually more optimal to put Yelan with a second Hydro, because assuming you can at least get 2 or even 3 stacks of this talent, if you put her with another Hydro, you get the Hydro Resonance buff, and that gives you about, like, I think it's a 20-25% HP boost. So that's going to be way more than the 30% if you had 4 different elements. So it's a really good talent, but you don't have to feel like you should max it out. Next up, we have Adapt with Ease. When you pop your burst, your active character is going to get a passive damage increase every few seconds that's going to reach a cap of 50% maximum damage. Now, it also says here that if you cast your burst again, it's going to reset that buff. So if you're at 30% and you have a lot of energy recharge on your Yelan, you pop the burst again, it's going to start that counter all the way back down to 0%, and then it's going to ramp up again. So it's also worth noting that when it comes to your rotation with Yelan, try to make sure her burst is the last one you use before you swap to your main DPS. That way, they can ramp up and get the most value from this Ascension talent. And lastly, we have the Necessary Calculation talent, and this is going to reward you 25% more rewards if you use her in a leeway expedition for 20 hours. It has to be the really long ones for the extra rewards, so keep that in mind. Next up, let's talk weapons for Yelan, and as you can see, I went all out on her banner last time she was having a rerun because I really like the character, and yes, I went for her signature weapon as well. I got the Aqua Simulacra. You don't have to get this weapon, but I'm just going to quickly go over why it's good. If you look at the stats up above, you might notice that the base attack is a little bit lower compared to other 5-star weapons. Usually they have like 600 attack or something like that. As I mentioned before, attack percentage or flat attack is not a priority at all for Yelan, so we don't care that it has a lower base attack. The crit damage, however, is really nice because that is something that Yelan can take advantage of. And if we look at the weapon's effect, it gives us even more HP, which is more damage. And it will also give us another 20% damage boost if there are opponents nearby, whether Yelan is on the field or not. And since she's basically off-field, or she can be off-field when her burst is active, she can take advantage of this full weapon's effect. Now, you might be saying, yo, I only have enough gems to pull for Yelan. Ain't no way I'm getting that signature weapon as well. Do you have any other recommendations for me? Absolutely. Now let's start with a 3-star option. You might remember this weapon if you saw my Tignari guide, but the Slingshot is actually yet another good weapon for Yelan. Again, we do not care about base attack for this weapon. That means very little to Yelan. We will be getting a free crit rate, however, which is really nice. It means when it comes to building her, we can probably focus more on crit damage and other substats that we need, like energy recharge and more HP. This weapon's effect doesn't really matter for Yelan as well, because in most cases, she's not the main DPS. She can be if you want her to be, but most cases you pop her burst and then you swap to your your main DPS, whoever that may be in the team, and they're the ones that are working with the dice to do, more damage. So Slingshot here, actually a really good choice for Yelan. Now when it comes to other 4-star options, it honestly depends on what kind of team you want to put Yelan on. So if, for example, she is the only Hydro character on your team for whatever team you put her on, and she needs help getting some particles, then honestly, it's not a bad idea to give her something like a Favonius Warbow or even the Sacrificial Bow. This is going to give her a bunch of energy recharge for free. The Favonius Warbow will also give you additional particles. So if you really need help getting that burst off cooldown and just better burst time overall, then Favonius Warbow, Sacrificial Bow, not bad options here. However, if you are using her with a secondary Hydro character that does generate particles, let's say you got that Jing Cho with the Sacrificial Sword on the team, then you actually don't need any of these weapons. You can go for a little bit more offensive stuff like the Stringless. The Stringless is okay, even though we don't really need the Elemental Mastery. It's more of the fact that it increases skill and burst damage by a decent amount, especially if you have more refinements on it. Another weapon that you could also consider is the Moan's Moon. This is a weapon that will increase her elemental burst damage based off the total cost of your team's energy. She can get a very sizable buff to her burst from this weapon alone, especially again once we get more refinement. So it's up to you if you want to use that weapon on her. Not a bad choice there. If you did go for the battle pass and you have this weapon kind of sitting around, the Viridescent Hunt isn't too bad either, and in fact it's actually a cool way to get a little bit of grouping in a Nilo Bloom team, since you don't have access to animal characters when using Nilo. Just a little fun fact for you there. So yeah, plenty of options when it comes to your Yelan's weapons. You can decide to give her more of an energy support weapon if you want, or if you're comfortable with her burst uptime, feel free to go for more damaging substat weapons. Black Cliff Warbow, also another decent option just because of the crit damage. You can get this from Paimon's Bargains. Another 5-star bow I should mention is Elegy for the End. This also gives you a huge chunk of energy recharge, and it lets Yelan give her team a team-wide buff of Elemental Mastery as well as attack percentage. Plenty of options there. Let's move on to her artifacts. I gave mine the Emblem of Severed Fate. This is going to help with Yelan's energy recharge, as well as increase her burst damage by a bit, depending on how much energy recharge you have. Now, this isn't your only option. If you're wondering, is there anything else I can give her? Absolutely. There's a bunch of 2-piece effects that we can mix and match up to your, liking and what artifact pieces have good substats. It's really up to you. So other options for you are going to be like a 2-piece Tenacity of the Millilith and maybe like a 2-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. Gives you a bit more damage, gives you a bit of energy recharge. It's a nice little balance there. You can also give her a 2-piece Heart of Depth. The Heart of Depth 2-piece also gives hydro damage as well. Or if you want to go 2-piece Vorukasha's Glow and 2-piece Tenacity of the Millilith for 40% increased HP, also a decent option there. It's really up to you and how well those substats roll for you. Just use whatever you feel like is best. So now that you've decided on an artifact set, what are you looking for on your substats? It's pretty easy. For Yelan's case, you want to make sure she has enough energy recharge to burst off cooldown. Now, if you're looking for a specific number for her energy recharge, well, that's going to depend on what team she's on and what weapon you're using with her. So this can vary. I'll just give a flat number of around 160 to 180 to be good, but if you have a good teammate like Jing Cho, maybe you have other support characters with a Favonius weapon, maybe you gave her an energy recharge weapon, then those needs definitely go way down. Once you get that energy recharge though, the other good stats you're looking for is HP percentage, as well as flat HP, Crit rate and crit damage also going to be good here because, again, we can take advantage of those stats to amplify Yelan's damage even further. Gonna repeat myself again here, but make sure you don't give her attack percentage or flat attack. That's a stat that Yelan straight up does not need. So when it comes to main stats of her artifacts, we don't have to give her attack percentage at all. So let's go over these scans. As I mentioned before, HP percentage as a main stat is going to be great here. And this is a really good example of a artifact piece with some good substats. We got crit damage, we got crit rate, and some energy recharge. Honestly, if that defense was just flat HP, this would be the perfect artifact for Yelan. When it comes to the goblet, definitely hydro damage bonus, as we can take advantage of that. If you don't have one with good substats, then you can opt in to give her an HP percentage goblet instead. Honestly, just pick the one that has better substats. And lastly, for the circlet, you can either go crit rate or crit damage. I went really hard on the crit damage from my Yelan, as you can see, with her total crit rate ratio being 56 to 228. You do not have to go that hard on the crit damage if you don't want to. You can also go for HP percentage as the main stat. Whew. Next up, let's talk about Constellations for Yelan, and as you can see, I really did go hard on her banner as I have one of her Constellations. Let's talk about what they do. So the first one is called Enter the Plotters, and this is going to give Yelan a second usage of her elemental skill. Now I got this because this constellation is really, really good in many ways. So for exploration purposes, that means you get to use your elemental skill twice, which means 6 seconds of running really, really fast with her elemental skill is really, really nice to get around Teyvat fast. Now, for combat purposes, this is also going to be really good because this is essentially a free sacrificial bow on my Yelan, minus the free energy recharge it provides. But I basically can use her skill twice in combat, which means I get twice the particles for my Yelan. This is a really good constellation for both exploration and combat. I do recommend it, but again, only if you can get it, only if you feel like you can get it with a bunch of gems. Don't try to wail for it or pull out the CC or anything. Don't do anything crazy like that. If you can get it without too much of a hassle, it's great, but don't feel like you have to have it. Next up is C2, and it's called Taking All Comers. This is pretty straightforward. It's just going to add an additional arrow with her elemental burst, so you're shooting 4 arrows. This 4th arrow is going to deal a little bit more damage based off her max HP, but it does have a little bit of a cooldown of 1.8 seconds. So it's a nice little boost in damage there. C3 and C5 are going to increase burst and skill effectively. This is nice, especially the burst, right? More damage for you. C4 is called Bait and Switch, and this is going to increase your your max HP by 10% for 25 seconds every time every time you mark an enemy with the lifeline. You can get an increase of a max of 40% HP in this manner. Now this is a constellation that's going to be good for groups of enemies, not so much bosses, because again, bosses don't really summon adds, but you still will get one stack of the constellation here, so you will get a 10%, it just won't be the full 40. Lastly is Winner Takes All, and this is a constellation I wish I had, but this is definitely whale territory here. When you use her burst, this is actually kind of cool, but when you use Yelan's burst, your normal attacks will all turn into breakthrough barbs. That's right. That AoE hydro damaging shots, you don't have to even aim them anymore or charge them. They turn into your normal attacks. At least for your first 5 normal attacks. Once you do 5, this effect ends until you use her burst again. Let's talk team comps for Yelan. Now, it's very easy to set her up in a bunch of teams. So if you've ever used the character Xingqiu, who's very similar to Yelan, then basically any team that he's in, Yelan can also be it. So if you want to set up a team like this, where you kind of like a Raiden international team, although this is very whale heavy because all the 5 stars. If you want to use like a international Ryan team, maybe instead of Kazuha and Zhongli, you have Bennett and Zhongling. You definitely can. She is an option here. Another popular team comp is to use the Hu Tao team here with double Hydro application. So you're also going to get the, as I mentioned before, the Hydro Resonance, which increases your HP by 25%. Basically, everyone on this team is going to benefit from that buff, right? That means Hu Tao's going to get more damage, Yelan's going to get more damage, Jingqiu doesn't benefit, but your Zhongli was also going to get more damage as well as a beefier shield. But let's say you don't have Hu Tao. No problem, because Yelan will also work with basically any Pyro DPS. So if you want to slap in Diluc, feel free. Yoimiya, also going to be good. Yan Fei, also going to be good. Honestly, up to you on your preferred Pyro DPS, except maybe Klee. But maybe she can probably work with a double Hydro setup. I just haven't tried it because I don't own the character. Other ways you can use Yelan is a Bloom team. It doesn't have to be, you know, a Nilo Bloom team. It could also be a Hyper Bloom team with Kuki Shinobu, or a Bergian team with Toma if you so choose, but this is just one example of having a character that can apply tons and tons of Hydro, and then you have Nihita here who applies tons and tons of Dendro to do your big damaging Dendro core damage with Nilo. So there is plenty of options when it comes to using Yelan. The only team comp I would say she doesn't work in, as I mentioned before, is a sort of freeze team, just because there isn't a lot of characters that do normal attacks with freeze, unless you're doing some Chongyun setup with the cryo conversion, but that's a little advanced, I would say. Alright, so I'm actually going to do the combat showcase next. We're going to fight 2 weekly bosses with Yelan in the party, and we're going to showcase how well she can do with one of her best teams, and in my opinion, that's the Hu Tao team because of the value you're getting from the Hydro Resonance. I just want to say that Yelan is just a fantastic character overall. Great for exploration, great for damage. She's made the Spiral Abyss really, really easy for me because of how many teams I can put her in. She's helped me just a bunch. Now, I know a lot of people just call her the 5-star Jingqiu and say, you know, I don't really need her because I already have Jingqiu. Well, while that may be true, you could also kind of use them either both together in a team like I am, or think of it like this. Now you have 2 Jingqius, so to speak. So now you can do a team where you don't have to share the Jingqiu. You could have maybe put Yelan with your Diluc team, and then Jingqiu goes with your Yan Fei team, or, you know, vice versa, whatever. If you, for Spiral Abyss, or just for exploration purposes, or anything like that. So I think of her as a great asset to your account, and she's just really fun to play overall. Just my 2 cents. Now that being said, let's go ahead and start the combat.
よし出発だ。せいいざ。くらえ。
痛がっちゃいない。やっと
風よそこ。みんながそばにいてくれるわ。
逃げ道はありません。
もみちろん散らまく惜しみ。
捕まえた。終わりね。撤収。裁きの雷、無我の境地。逃げ道はあります。痛くてもやめないわよ。
よしせマイそこだ。
やっちかかれ。はっとどの目が出るかしら。はっ豪華の抱擁。やっすべて燃え尽きるまで。救済はいらないの。
I wish that last Senora fight went a little bit smoother, but I hope I was able to showcase Yelan in a much faster, but still showcasing that she's a great sub DPS. That's going to be a wrap on this video. If you feel like I missed anything, or you feel like I didn't explain stuff well enough, or you have additional questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer you. Good luck with your pulls if you're deciding to pull for her in 4.0. Have fun with the new Fontaine area as well. And with that being said, don't forget to leave a like and or subscribe if you like this kind of content. I will be making more in the future, not just for Genshin Impact, but for Star Rail and possibly other stuff as well. I don't know. But that's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.